too long, but I know that, our brains are wired to think that I have to start talking right away, or that I can't, take a second and actually think instead of saying like or like. So just know that it is okay, and especially on the phone, because it can feel super awkward on the phone because you can't see the other person. So if you're thinking, you don't want to be silent, but it is definitely okay to take a little bit of time and think about formulating your answer. Any other thoughts from you?
That just sounds like
That's pretty much the answer. All right, so, oh yeah.
Oh, I was going to say, I think it's a great way to practice because it keeps you thinking and it makes you go back and remember these little things that maybe you've forgotten that were important at the time. So it's a good reminder.
I also thought that the situation was better because it's a student that you're working with, so you're not as nervous. So it's good practice for you to be an interview when you're nervous. It's harder to think.
Anything else?
It was interesting talking to everyone after we were done with the interviews because we I know I got ideas from other people and I remembered stories that I could have used in the interview that I just didn't think of until afterwards.
Yeah. So that's what we're hoping is like that while the P's were talking, the A's would have extra time to think of, to spark thoughts about what they were going to say when it was their turn. So the whole point of the whole exercise is preparation, obviously, and so we're going to go through a couple of slides just to share with you some tips about how you can prepare.
Okay, so basically it's a very robust presentation. I won't go through all of the slides, but basically, pre-interview preparation, the interview, the closeout, so what you do after the interview. Savvy style is kind of like what you're supposed to wear, but I'm sure all of you know what to wear and what not to wear when it comes to an interview. And then we'll just open it up for question and answers. So going into more of the pre-interview, it's really about having like an elevator pitch, knowing the company that you want to work for, that you're interviewing for, and then doing your research. So the first thing that you can definitely really start with is basically yourself and develop your introduction. So I always have, what your name is, you obviously know that, what you want, and what qualifies you for the position. So these things that basically, when an interviewer sees that you already know this, it kind of sets your commitment level, so they know that you're committed to the company as well as the position that you're going out for. And then also, it works out your nerves for the big day. So instead of going into the interview already feeling like, okay, I'm nervous because I'm just interviewing, but then I'm also nervous because I have absolutely no idea like how I'm going to even start this out. Like at least some of those nerves are taken care of because you already have something that you've practiced, you know exactly what you're going to say, and that's it. For the company, network with people you know that are in the company, or maybe like they used to work for the company, or even if it's just the recruiters that you see at the career fair, just so that you can feel abreast about what's going on. Go to the company website. You can even ask like FAQs and Q&As to some of the people in HR, because some of the company websites actually have a contact us page, and you can contact them, and more than likely they will respond to you. And then you can also formulate questions about the company by doing that. So if you go to the company webpage, you have questions about, oh, where did they get their start, or like, how did we go from there? It's just like, is the commitment level still the same? You can ask all of those questions to the recruiters even when you're at a career fair, and that also sets your commitment level with them too. Then if you're going for a specific position, you can network with people that have a similar role to you. So, I mean, I have an IT analyst role, Elizabeth has the same. I have friends that are working at Accenture, they basically do the same thing, it's just called something different. They're like, one of them is like a tech lead or whatever, but they're like, basically I'm analyzing something. It's the same position, different, different title. So you can definitely get, pros and cons from them about that position that you're going after. Read the position description on the website. So, like careers.jnj.com, they always list, exactly what our requirements are, what you're supposed to be doing during that time. And then you can also formulate questions about the position in the interview. So this is kind of like a synopsis slide that you can just use to your advantage. I mean, obviously, you guys have been through plenty of career fairs, so you already should have some sort of elevator pitch when you're going out to your recruiter. It's like you're already trying to make eye contact, you're already trying to do a firm handshake, you already know exactly, hey, I'm so-and-so, I'm junior, I'm senior, I'm sophomore, it's like I'm looking for XYZ with this company. But then you can also say, it's like, oh, I'm interested in this position, or oh, I have like a couple questions to ask, and it just basically gets the ball rolling so that the company definitely gets your commitment level, and then it sparks them so that they remember you later when they're making like decisions. So
one thing I would just add about the position piece, you would be surprised how much information you can get out of the position descriptions. So, I mean, really read into it. If it says they want someone who's innovative, then explain how you're innovative. And you can tailor your resume even to include those buzzwords that are in the position description. If it says they want someone who is a good, team player, or, works with teams well, communicates well, then just take those buzzwords and think of ways that you can explain how you fit that position.
So you guys have any questions, comments, concerns? Yes.
I have a question. So, like, when you're doing your introduction, like, I heard that, like, they're supposed to more lead the interview, or do you just, like, come out and say, like...
Well, so, in an interview session, usually, what do you do when you first walk in? It's like, you're already saying, you introduce yourself. So, you may not have to go into, like, the full pitch, like, just right in their face, but at least, it's going to say, hey, how you doing? This is my name, so-and-so, give them time to introduce themselves, and then you can say, oh, they'll start automatically. So it's just really knowing that when you walk into the door, you kind of have already formulated your thoughts in your head of how you're going to start responding. So just introducing yourself, them introducing themselves, and then they'll be like, okay, as you know, we're here for like such and such position, and then you'd be like, yeah, it's just like I did research, blah, blah, blah. It's like I had a couple questions, but I can wait till the end of the interview. I've been in an interview like that. I was like, oh yeah, I had a couple questions, and my interviewer asked me what were my questions right then and there. So it really depends on who that interviewer is, and like what their style is.
And sometimes they ask right away, like, okay, tell me about yourself. Well, they'll just start with a very general question, like, okay, why are you interested in this company? So it's good to have like those general things worked out ahead of time so that you have answers. They may come up later in that interview too, so you just want to have those three things: yourself, your company, position, figured out ahead of time.
Actually, how important is it to have questions? Because like often I go in and I feel like I kind of know most of the stuff, but I don't have any like specific questions. And then does it look bad if they're like, do you have any questions? And you're like, no. Should you have questions like to show that you've read up on your stuff and have questions regarding it, or?
I don't know about you, but sometimes like if I've done my research and my basic questions are answered, if they ask me if I have questions, I say no, and it's like the reason is, I've been on your website pretty thoroughly, and all of my base questions, like where you're located, it's like what kind of, things for my position you have available, all of that stuff is answered for me. But then sometimes if they say, oh, if all those basic questions are answered, it's like they might ask, like, do you have any interest in, XYZ about the company? Or you may think that, oh, I'm not going to have any questions, but maybe something that, you know, you guys start having more of a discussion instead of an interview, and then they might say something that sparks your interest about the company, and then, you know, just being quick on your feet, able to say, oh, it's like, well, can you tell me more about that? And then you might start formulating questions in your head from there.
My backup was always like, you can always ask about that person. So obviously you're not going to know everything about the person. So you can always have something in the back of your head like, oh, tell me about your position or your career path, or what do you like about the company, what do you wish you could change. So, you know, it's not bad to say, no, I have no questions, but it definitely doesn't hurt to show that you want to learn more about it, even if it's just learn more about that person.
You have a question?
Is it okay to have things like written down during the interview, or should I have it all in your head? Like if you have notes or you have questions or anything.
Yeah, notes are fine.
You definitely can have your resume in front of you, and if you want to add notes to that, like no one would really notice that you're, you know, you definitely write down your questions. So I don't think there's a problem with that.
No, I've seen some people, they write them down on like cue cards or something, and that's it. I used to have mine on the back of my resume. If there were some long-winded question that I could not remember, I just had it on the back of my resume.
Yes, I have a question about their question when they ask, oh, tell me about yourself. So I never exactly know like what that means. So does that mean tell me about your interests outside of working, or tell me about your interests working? Tell me about your future ideals that you have about your career. Like what exactly overall is that question?
It's a question.
I mean, yeah, I think a lot of interviews try not to ask that question because it is kind of hard for people to answer. I would think that if they ask it, it's more about, like, if they ask in the beginning, I think it's more about giving your pitch, you know, who are you, what are you looking for? They already know that information from your resume, but it's nice to have that little spiel. I think you just kind of have to play it by ear. Like, if they're asking more about your extracurriculars or what do you like to do outside, then obviously you can answer it that way, but it's kind of hard to tell depending on who's asking the question.
And at the end, for example, sometimes it's like, oh, tell me more about yourself.
Yeah, and then I think it makes sense, like if you've already talked about the professional side, to say, you know, I'm also interested or involved in these other things. So.
I guess it really depends on like when in the interview they ask the question. So if it's in the front, do your elevator pitch. It's like say, hey, this is what I'm here for, blah blah blah. If it's like in the middle, I've noticed sometimes, like some of the people that have interviewed me, they say, you know, sometimes I ask that if I'm getting wishy-washy answers. So it's like I kind of want to just know more about the person. Like it's like, well, what is your passion? If they just kind of feel kind of flat, or that sort of thing. So I think it's one of those jarring questions that's uber broad that you could basically talk about anything in, and just kind of they're just trying to figure out, you know, who you are. And then if it's at the end and they just want to know more, they definitely just say, oh yeah, you know, extracurriculars, I'm interested in X, Y, Z, and then it's usually they start talking. Do you guys have any other questions, or can we move on? Because after this, it's like the day of the interview, you know, same spiel like I already said, like greet the interviewer with a firm handshake. Make and maintain eye contact, but it's not like you have to stare them down and like drill a hole in their head or something. It's perfectly normal. It's like you maintain eye contact with somebody, and then it's like your eyes will like start to move all over the place, because I know you're gonna be nervous. Just make sure like that first like 15 seconds or something, it's like you're good, and you know your body will take over. Just like, okay, whatever. Give your introduction, give your elevator pitch, or just like introduce yourself. Actively listen to your interviewer. I've noticed when I'm interviewing somebody else or I'm being interviewed, you can always kind of tell if they're I can always tell if they're going to be by the book, or they like to, you know, go off on tangents. So if they start asking you about the position, and then they're like, oh, sometimes they'll just read down your resume, and then sometimes they won't even look at it, and they'll just want you to kind of figure out, say, okay, it's like, well, what do you have to tell me? And then you can follow up with like well-informed questions after their comments. So if they've made a comment about your resume, just either make the statement back, and then you can ask them another question. So it's almost like a rebuttal. And then, as Elizabeth said, don't fear the silence during an interview. If it takes you some time to collect your thoughts, take the time. It's like, the worst thing you could do is just kind of like shoot off at the lip and just say something and you're saying, or like, or yeah, or because it's like if they catch you off guard, just take a deep breath and you won't ramble. And they know that. They know that you're probably going to take the time to collect yourself. And that goes far more than just going, like just spewing out whatever. And even on the phone. On the phone it's a lot more awkward, but sometimes I do that. I just say, oh, it's like I'm just thinking about the questions, like give me a few seconds. And they're like, yeah, sure, no problem. It's like collect my thoughts and then I talk. If you need something clarified, ask them to clarify the question. And just say what part is like confusing you. So just be very candid and very honest. And there's nothing wrong with that. Do you guys have any questions about this? Comments? Concerns? Next, I don't know, are you guys familiar with all the types of questions that you can get into an interview? Not at all? Okay, so basically you have the background questions. You know, they want to ask, it's like, oh, where did you go to school? It's like, kind of what classes did you like? You know, why did you like them? Why didn't you like them? It's like they're just trying to like gauge what type of person you are. They'll have like the interest questions, so they'll kind of ask, and I think we had a couple on the sheets, you know, what are you interested in? Kind of like what's your passion, that sort of thing. They'll ask the standard resume questions, so they'll just ask you questions off of your resume. Please know your resume that you put on it, like the back of your hand, because I've had somebody that I've interviewed and they didn't know what was on the resume, and that's not cool at all. It made for a very quick interview. They'll have brain teasers. Brain teasers are basically, they might ask you something completely different from what they do. Microsoft is very good at this. They might ask you in an interview, please, you're going to design a bathroom, and you have unlimited budget, and tell me how you're going to go about doing it. And you're just like, oh, okay, all right. But then they just kind of want to see what your thought process is and how you go about solving that problem. So there was another one that they did, but I can't remember. It's some off the wall thing. They will also have a case. So it's sort of like a problem. It will be bulleted like you saw the questions that we gave you. And it's just kind of like, okay, this is the problem. And then, you know, how did you go about finding the solution? How did you go about this? It's like, what did you think of the problem in the first place? It's a more in-depth question. And then obviously the behavioral question. So it's just like you're working with a team, you know, basically I think most of the questions on the sheet were behavioral questions. And then on the next slide, they have, you know, these are more the behavioral interviews. So it's like the what, the why, and the how. So they use it to learn more about your past behavior and how you reacted into situations. They basically do it because past behavior, it's like if you did it in the past, you do it in the present, and you'll do it in the future. And then determines like the competencies they're looking for, and it chooses questions. They choose what questions to require you to demonstrate those competencies. So if they want to know what you're doing, say for instance in like, I don't know, what's it doing?
Well, I mean, some of the ones we had. I mean, the key for behavioral is that they want you to give an actual example of something you did. It's not necessarily to say how would you act in the situation, but actually how did you act. So just examples from the sheets. The first one describes a situation when you're dealing with a group of dissatisfied customers. That's behavioral. Number 2 is kind of behavioral, but it's also kind of like interest, passion. Number 3 is behavioral because it's tell me about a situation where you did something. And number 4 is also a mix. So you'll see a lot of those types of questions.
Sorry, I don't know if it like goes around along with the side we're currently on, but like oftentimes if I'm in an interview and they ask me like certain questions, I just keep referring back to the same work experience, and I go like, you know, this one summer job I had, and it's like I catch myself, but then I don't know what else to say because like whatever I'm about to say just fits so well. So how much should you like vary what your work experiences are, like, you know, like switch between different jobs you've had? Because like, I mean, I have 3 different summer jobs on my resume, but there's just that one that I constantly go back to in terms of like being a leader or solving issues or whatever. And so like, how much should you vary whatever it is that you have experience with?
I mean, I guess for me it depends on the person. So you've said that you have like 3 different, you know, summer jobs. So I would think that within each one of them, you would be able to have like, maybe even if it's just like a small time, you would be able to vary your stories just a little bit. Like, unless it was some really, really big project in that first one and you just got slammed with just about, you know, challenges, difficult personalities, it's like feedback, that sort of thing. I know that if you have maybe just like, maybe it's just you have one internship on your resume, or sometimes like when it's that first one you don't have any, and I think then it's kind of more acceptable to go back to one story. But if you've had, you know, 3 or 4 like summer jobs or like different work studies, then it's not as acceptable as the first one. Not that it's saying, oh no, you failed, but it's just kind of like they would want you to have more varied stories, something that you can pull back to. I know one thing that I do, because I used to do that a lot, is look at all of your summer jobs, and I'm sure you guys remember like the questions that just threw you off in an interview. Like it kind of just stays ingrained in your head until you kind of figure out what you were going to say to that question. That would have been like really, really cool and really good. And just do that. Just figure out like, okay, you know, what were the difficulties or the challenges I had in that job? Or like, you know, describe a situation where you were put into a difficult situation in each one of those. And then if you do that, then you can see where the similarities are, where the really big differences are. And when they ask those questions, you'll be more prepared. So it's not like you're going to default back to the same one that you've always defaulted back to. So it's kind of like a pro-con list for questions.
One other thing is like you don't just have to talk about work experience. So if you have a creative example that answers the question, then you can definitely use it. You can definitely use class and project experiences as well as, you know, extracurricular. Even if you're not a leader in an extracurricular, if the situation fits, you know, feel free to use it as an example.
Does anybody else have any questions?
In terms of like types of questions, are the types of questions for interviewing for an internship different for an actual job? Like would they ask for different things?
I mean, we do have separate like interview packets, but I don't think the questions differ that much.
They might, I think the only difference is that when you're looking for an internship, they realize that you might not have as much work experience as you would when you're going out for an actual job. So they'll want your answers to be a bit more robust, but the questions are still the same. Pretty standard questions. Does anybody else have any questions?
So for some reason I thought that going for a job would be different than just an interview because you would have more of those case questions, like, oh, what would you do if this? Like, what would you do under, you know? So it's not the case. Somehow, because I've heard of stories where people actually have to go and draw out a plan.
It really is a company, yeah. So like Microsoft, Google's, like they definitely give you brain teasers.
Yeah.
Maybe more of a case type situation. A lot of the companies though definitely use behavioral, so you will get at some point behavioral questions. And it just depends on the company. Like some companies have you interview with multiple people during the course of the day, so you might get a couple different types of interviews too. It's hard, I guess, to prepare for the brain teaser case But you can definitely like practice getting your brain into that mode. And honestly, all they're looking for is for your thought process. So it's not about having the right answer of, how best to design the bathroom, like she said, but they're looking for you to just start talking and like walk them through it, like what you're thinking. So.
Because for those, I mean, they're definitely, literally, they don't care if it's a right or wrong answer. They're clearly just looking to see how you solve problems. So, in the case of the bathroom, I think one of the first questions out of my mind was like, well, what's the demographic that you're looking at? Because I'm like, a bathroom. I was like, I don't know. It's like a bathroom would be different from a 2-year-old than like a 25-year-old than a 50-year-old. So I was just like, well, what's your demographic? And then they'll respond to you and you keep asking questions, they'll keep giving you answers. Some of them are very blasé, some of them might relate directly to the point, whatever